And Kevin Green's back with us alongside Mr. Scott Durfey. And we've got actually a couple other ones that are kind of interesting, I think, for traders who are focusing on the stocks. Are obviously not going to be big highlights for the market. But SPG, which has exposure to a lot of questionable kind of commercial real estate over the last year, has been in a really good recovery mode with rates coming off. So we're going to take a look at that stock. But generally, Scott, obviously that was a rough session, but we didn't end on the tick lows. So, you know, we got something, I guess, to give us some hope for tomorrow.
Yeah, there you go. Looking for the positive and everything, right?
That's right.
Yeah. A little bounce at the end of the day is definitely something that we don't mind going home on. If we've got to go home with it being down, let's get a little bounce.
Yeah, it was a good close.
Absolutely, you know, and I think that, you know, this is indicative perhaps of the way that the traders and investors are taking a look at what's happening right now. I mean, nobody seems to be overly panicking. I mean, all day long we've had the market's diving banner everywhere. I mean, and we just see it. But, you know, this is to kind of be expected. We're in August. It's thin, and we're right before a kind of a small geopolitical event, wink, wink, nod, nod, in November, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, I mean, you know, today is we've got to see more. We got to see more.
Yeah, definitely need to do more. What'd you think, KG? Decent little close there for futures, kind of carrying it through the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, nice little cover going into the close here. And obviously, we will still have some overnight risk. I think that's going to be the big key area. If we actually see maybe some stabilization in the Asia-Pacific markets, that probably will translate over here in the U.S. equities. And I think that'll be our strong catalyst moving forward. If we do see continued weakness, especially when it comes to the yen, or strength when it comes to the yen, then we might have a negative reaction to the downside here. So I think we're kind of in a balance area for now and testing some key areas of support and trying to hold on to them, Oliver.
Okay. Palantir coming out this afternoon. I mean, always a fun one, but, you know, I don't know how big of a deal it's going to be. However, you know, if it hits well and it gets a rebound, like we had AMD up today, I mean, there were a few things. We had some dip buying. You know, if we could get something positive in the narrative for tech, Scott, it certainly wouldn't hurt.
And that's indeed what we need is narrative in tech, right? And so what investors and traders are going to be looking a little bit for in Palantir is we're going to be watching closely, monitoring the performance, right, of the commercial segment. You know, that's projected to account for almost half of the company's total revenue. So that revenue is expected to grow by 32% year over year. We'll see how that plays out, but that's kind of a key element in today's earnings for Palantir.
What do you think, KG? Stock that does it have the prowess to get us excited at this point if it comes in nice, or do you think still a company that has valuation issues?
Yeah, I would say there's a cohort of investors that are really dedicated to this name. So even if we
really
do see, once again, yeah, so the commercial side of their business really continuing its growth phase here, I think you're probably going to see some strong buying activity happening for the stock. It's been a hard one to short for a lot of institutions, so I still think that there's probably more upside potential than downside movement going into this report, and knowing that we had a significant sell-off today in the equity market.
Yeah, it's trades like 75 times forward still at this point. So I don't know how much heavy lifting it's going to be able to do for us at this point. We're in valuation correction mode. The good news is tomorrow's pretty light on the calendar. We don't really have much. And as far as the week goes, it's pretty slow for economic data too, Scott. So that might actually help us since the economic data have not been helping.
Well, that's true in part, right? Because we did get ISM, and ISM today kind of leaned a little out of the negative realm. And so, you know, last week it was the sky is falling, all the economic data is proving it. Then we get the services numbers out today, and they're like, hang on, guys, maybe not so bad. So, you know, I'm a little more potentially optimistic. We do need a little breath. It'll be good to have a kind of a slow week in terms of economic data, but don't forget ISM was decent. Yeah,
some sticky inflationary forces, but I feel like the market was okay with that. With the recovery overall in the number. Hey, Palantir's going to rip here. All right. Hope springs eternal for tech bulls trading at $27. Palantir erases 2 days of selling basically in an instant, though we did already bounce back up off of below $21 earlier this morning. So Palantir closed around 24 and is now adding on $3. Takes us actually above the range from last week, too. Like I said, it's a very expensive stock with huge multiple on the forward earnings, but did just grow at 27% on the top line. So, I mean, Palantir is still definitely an engine of growth, and it seems any concern that maybe they were going to fall down the list of government customer priorities doesn't seem to be the case. Company just beat revenue by like 20 million, 678 million versus 652, which was the estimate. Seems like their outlook was also pretty darn good here. The Street was looking for their outlook to get capped at 2.7 billion for revenue, and they're pushing that up to 2.75 kg. So that's a pretty decent little report.
Yeah, especially when you're kind of looking at that Q3 guide coming in between 697 million and 701 million. She was looking for 679 million. So this is actually a really good report, and it kind of shows the fact that the AI exposure that they have continues to grow, and they kind of highlight the strength that they are seeing in that segment, as well as the commercial side of their business. So I think this is actually a pretty decent relief for all the red that we saw on the screen here today, Oliver. And as you talked about, I mean, it's only 2 days of selling that it's really recovering right now, but you got to start somewhere, and I think that's really where a lot of these bulls within this name probably will find a little bit of comfort in.
Yeah, got to start somewhere. Scott Durfey, not a bad little place to try and maybe invigorate overnight traders.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could very well do that. We'll have to just kind of wait and see. Do remember, we are in the beginning of August. It is a little more thinly traded. So perhaps the movement wouldn't be as great as it would be otherwise. But we should definitely take a look.
Their operating profit up 88% over the past year, Kevin. I mean, that's going to help a lot. The valuation, too, for sure. It seemed like margins increased a ton. I mean, they're doing big stuff, improving the balance sheet.
Yeah, definitely. And also when you're looking at the U.S. commercial revenue, so that grew by around 55% on a year-over-year basis. And even if you're looking at quarter-over-quarter, that came in at 6%. Customer count, when you're looking at the commercial business, grew 83% year-over-year, 13% quarter-over-quarter. I mean, these are the type of numbers you really want to be able to see hit these healthy growth rates. The commercial remaining deal value, you can kind of look at that as maybe their backlog equivalent, if you will, grew 103% year-over-year, 11% quarter-over-quarter. They're getting deals, Oliver, and they're getting deals done, and it looks like they're able to deliver on those deals, and that's why you're seeing that showing up on the top line revenue. And even if you're looking at the government revenue, which is a little bit more cyclical in nature, it's still relatively strong. So I think right now this company has been able to prove itself. There's a lot of skeptics out there around this name. Obviously, the forward multiple is very expensive, but if you're kind of looking at it from a price to sales standpoint with these type of growth rates, you could most likely kind of justify the fact that why it deserves a premium in this market, where a lot of their competitors probably are seeing a little bit more of a stagnant growth here in the near term.
Okay, yeah, good analysis. A pretty good number here. Bottom line, top line, does look good next to peers too. To your point, Cloud Group much more lackluster than hardware. I mean, this is kind of one of those earnings that almost looks like it would be attached more to kind of some of the more hardware style of outlooks we've gotten over the past year, where there's a clear uplift in some of the AI-driven demand. All right, so Palantir pretty good here. The other one that's out this afternoon in the market is pretty fun, which is HIMS, which HIMS and Hers, which is up like 125%, and it's been trying to compete in the weight loss drug business. This stock's been amazing on the year. I feel like there's definitely a potential for volatility as usual. It's kind of an early nascent company still, but did beat on the bottom line by a cent, and the top line beat by 15 or about 16, 17 million, 315.6 versus roughly 300 million estimate. So that's pretty good. And I feel like there's definitely a big trend of people ordering, over-the-counter stuff and also like prescription stuff too through online channels. I feel like there's somewhat of a disruptor in some ways, Scott.
Yeah, totally. And it's not just this. I mean, that is broadening out into so many other areas in the same sector. But absolutely seeing some, this is good for HIMS. HIMS can be a disruptor. They're definitely in an industry that is disrupting the market, especially, and you mentioned it, especially with those online prescriptions. They're just so easy to do, very convenient, very discreet. And so, we're seeing a big move towards that. They're capitalizing. We'll see if they continue to capitalize. You mentioned they're fairly young. We'll see how they continue to grow. But they've been growing their user base pretty steadily. And so, we'll be looking at for new acquisitions to continue to grow. We'll look at, and maybe even more importantly, those retention rates to hang on as well. And as long as well as any improvements in customer lifetime value, hanging on to that customer and keeping them for longer periods of time.
They added 155,000 net new subscribers in the quarter, revenue up 52%. I mean, this company's jamming right now, KG. It feels like they've got a pretty good mousetrap.
Yeah, I would love to see what the comps are for their guidance moving forward here. And looking at the monthly online revenue per average subscriber, I mean, you're looking at a change of around 8% on a year-over-year basis. I wouldn't say that's the most healthiest growth, but it is growth to say the least here. So I think we're going to get more insights to some of the regulatory headwinds that they've seen over the last couple of weeks, right? Some inquiries coming in. How are they managing that? Do they feel like that is going to be a threat to their business for the long term? I think that's what really a lot of investors are really kind of focusing on here in the near term. But overall, it's a decent number. I'm not sure how the guidance really stacks up right now, though. That's the only big question mark for me. Just looking at the top line numbers, you would think that we might have saw a little bit more of a bid in the stock. Stock sliding a little bit. I'm just a little bit concerned that maybe they came up a little bit light when it comes to next quarter or full year guide.
Okay. Looks like they upped it a little bit, actually, for the fiscal year, 1.37 to 1.4. Earlier they had said 1.2 to 1.23, but I'm not sure what the analysts were looking for. There's only a handful that cover them, and they're kind of mixed. But it seems like an improvement from their last message. The CEO also talked about getting some more branded weight loss medications into the offering. I'd still compare it to kind of the classic pharmacy trades, which are evaporating. Those stocks are just doing terrible. So if there's an explanation for it might be this company kind of disrupting some of those like the CVS, Walgreens stuff. Guys, we got to jump. Thank you very much. Scott Durfey, Kevin Green.